Welcome. We're doing another installment of our Roman Republic unit. This is one of my favorite stories in this unit. It is the era of the Club and Dagger, or rather the beginning of the era of Club and Dagger, with the brief story of the history of Tiberius Gracchus. All right. You don't have to take a lot of notes, so sit back and relax, but just listen to the story. It's a great story, and hopefully you'll be captivated by it and you'll understand the turmoil that this is about to usher, a century of assassinations. All right, so Tiberius Gracchus, like I said, very few notes. I'm just going to have one page, like 5 bullet points, and you just write periodically, all right? So he's a member of the Scipio family. He's relative of Scipio Africanus, remember, the great hero of the Punic War who defeats Hannibal at Carthage and ends the Second Punic War. Tiberius is there, picks up some medals, is first over the wall and stuff like that. So people know Tiberius Gracchus, and his family, through his mother's side, the Scipio side, has a lot of money. All right, he's part of the patrician class. But this is where the story of Tiberius goes a little sideways. All right, for hundreds and hundreds of years, we know the rich keeps getting richer, right? We have our paterfamiliases. The patrician class has a stranglehold on everything in Rome. And the plebeians, well, they're just kind of around for the ride. In the Second Punic War, after Hannibal came through Italy, the land has been devastated. The poor are even poorer. The rich, because they have kind of backup wealth, they've been buying a lot of the land, creating latifundias. Remember that term from the other day? So they have these massive estates where they've collected all of the little land from around the poor farmers and just bought it up, and so now the farmers are out of work. They've moved to the city because they can't get jobs even on the big farms because we have slaves from the Punic Wars. It's awful for the plebeians. And Tiberius Gracchus looks around at this world that he lives in and he says, I need to do something for them. Right? So he runs for tribune. Right? And remember, tribunes only serve for a year and they're supposed to speak for the people. Now, in the past, they kind of speak for the people, but they still are often protecting the interests of the patricians. Tiberius really changes that. All right? He really speaks for the plebeians, and he wants to improve their lives. All right? And he says the plebeians need 2 things, and they're really, really simple. They need land, more specifically their land back, and they need a little bit extra money to get things started. All right? And so the first, he starts talking, he starts making speeches in the forum as tribune, talking about how it's a shame no one ever enforces the Licinian law, this ancient Roman law that says no one person can own more than 300 acres of land. This pretty much guarantees that there would be land for everyone. Now, no one's enforced Licinian law for a long time, and these latifundias are not hundreds of acres, they're thousands of acres. And so if people listen to Tiberius and the Licinian law is enforced, a lot of these patrician families that have made a killing during the Punic War, or the Second Punic War in particular, are going to lose a lot of land. So they are very, very unhappy. But the plebeians, of course, who are struggling to get by, who have been kicked off their land, think this is a tremendous idea, and they just support Tiberius even more. All right. The other thing that gets Tiberius in trouble is this great Persian prince Attalus dies, and at this time the Roman Empire controls that area. I forget where he rules, but he sends his wealth, all the wealth of his estate goes back to Rome. All right, and normally the patrician families share the wealth amongst themselves. Tiberius hears about this estate of Attalus, the wealth coming into Rome, and he says, the rich don't need the money. Why don't we share this wealth of Attalus with the plebeians? Give it to the poor. And, of course, the poor love this idea. It's getting money. The rich hate the idea. It's giving away money. So Tiberius keeps offending the people in power, namely the Senate. All right? Remember those 300 old patrician families that have control over Roman politics. And so the end of Tiberius Gracchus happens really, really quickly. All right? He's massacred by a mob with 300 of his followers. But the way it happens is really the shock and awe, all right, of the Tiberius Gracchus story. The Licinian law, failure. Can't enforce it. Sharing the wealth of Atticus, failure. The patricians get it. And so Tiberius is like, I can do more. But it's now 132 BCE, so his 1 year as tribune is over. And he can't run again. Or at least he's not supposed to. But Tiberius says, no, I have more to give. I'm not going to just go quietly into that dark night, right? I'm going to stand up and I'm going to run for re-election. And the Senate is like, this is the last thing we need. A super popular, young Tiberius Gracchus, war hero, voice of the people, from a strong family, with money, speaking for the people. This is the worst. We need to unseat him. So they start talking about how they can do this. And they say, what's the worst thing to have in Rome? We know this. Think back to the story of the rape of Lucretia. What does Brutus swear? There will never be kings in Rome. So the machine goes out and they start talking about Tiberius Gracchus wants to be a king. Why else would you run for re-election as a tribune? He's never going to step down. He's trying to be king in Rome. There will never be kings in Rome. And so Tiberius is there. He wins re-election and he's marching through the streets and the people are all cheering him and he's confronted by this mob. And the senators are kind of riling up this mob, rallying around the mob. And Tiberius fears for his life, and he touches his head. This is like a predetermined signal, the story goes, to seek help. He touches his head. And the senator, namely his own uncle, Nasica Scipio, says, look, he's trying to make himself king. He's asked for a crown. He's touching his head. And this is like the final blow. The senators, these 300 old guys, they stand up, they rip the legs off their stools, and they go out into the streets with these billy clubs, and they attack Tiberius, and the mob follows them, and they attack all of his followers, and they beat Tiberius down in the street. They club him to death, and they throw his body into the river Tiber. Right? And that is the beginning. This bloody, bloody massacre of Tiberius Gracchus, the club that begins the era of the club and dagger. Thanks for watching.